Is medical coding still worth it in 2025? Hey there, I'm Victoria. I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator. And my channel is dedicated to providing tips, tricks, and tutorials to help coders be successful in their careers. Today, I want to talk about medical coding and is it still worth it? I have a lot of people asking me if this is the right career for them, and I want to provide some pros and cons, and that's what we're going to cover in today's video. By the way, today's video is sponsored by Preppy, but more on them in just a minute. First, let's talk about what is medical coding. Medical coding is a translation process, but not so much a one-to-one translation. It's very multifaceted. There's a lot of subjectivity, a lot of variance involved. So it's not something that can be completely automated. There's some chunks of it that can be, and we'll talk about automation in just a minute. Now, a medical coder is someone who reads through all these different medical reports, all of these notes, hospital stays, and they pull out certain information such as diagnoses, such as surgeries, procedures, equipment, medication, and they convert them into these unified codes. We need these codes to be all organized, these diagnoses to be organized, so that we can use that data. And we use it for a lot of different purposes. The first thing people, of course, think of is billing, because we want everything to go out accurately and be paid by the insurance company. But we use that data for a lot more than just the billing. We use it to do a lot of analysis. So with those unified codes, we can determine where certain outbreaks of diseases are. We can determine how frequently people are maybe developing complications from certain conditions or from certain surgeries. And we can also work on the costs associated with different diagnoses or different treatments. Now, medical billing and coding are kind of two sides of the same coin. A lot of programs train you for both medical billing and coding because they are so intertwined. Most technical schools, community colleges in your area, they probably even have programs that are for both billing and coding. You can't just learn coding. You have to know a little bit about billing. You can't usually just learn the billing. You have to know a little bit about the code sets. So some people want to go just into billing. Other people want to go just into coding, but it's important to know a little bit about both in either direction. And for most general billing positions, you don't have to have a certification. They just want you to have the appropriate training. For coding positions, they really focus on certifications, especially through two major hitters in here, AAPC and AHIMA. So you might get offered a certification as part of your training package for your educational institution or your organization. But if you're really gearing towards a medical coding specific job, you want those credentials from AAPC or AHIMA. Those are the gold standards. Again, if you want to just get a billing job, you can get a different type of certification through another organization. But for a medical coding job, what employers are going to look for is a credential from the AAPC, like the CPC, or from AHIMA like the CCS. Training for medical coding is typically around 6 to 9 months. So that includes training for medical terminology, some anatomy, a little bit of physiology. And you need to know that in this career, there are programs that can train you in a shorter period of time. But if you're someone who has absolutely no healthcare experience, that can be a lot more difficult. I do have whole videos on how to do self-study as well. That is not for everyone, but I do have recommendations as far as what books you can learn medical terminology, free resources to learn medical terminology, the information that you're going to need to know for medical coding self-studies, for workbooks, training books, study guides, the code books themselves. So self-study, again, is not for everyone, and it is definitely not a free thing because there are expenses included in that. And if your aim is certification at the very bare minimum, that requires membership to the AAPC and paying for that exam fee. So it's not, you can't get certified in medical coding for free. You could probably find some maybe books that you could borrow from some people and learn it maybe for free that way, but it's really better to go through a formal training program. A lot of people start in the traditional avenues. They go look at technical schools, they go look at their community colleges. You actually don't need an associate's degree for just a medical coding job. Associate's degrees may come into play if you want to get into management or maybe higher level positions. Honestly, I've seen a lot that don't require them. So if you're thinking like, oh, I want to get into auditing or documentation improvement. I've worked in those fields before, and I do not have an associate's degree. And I've known plenty of people that have worked in those fields and don't have associate's degrees. But if you're looking into a tech school or community college, I really wouldn't recommend paying maybe more than $4,000 or so for training. But one of the perks about going through a community college is you could possibly get things like workforce improvement grants or employer reimbursement. So that does make it more manageable. You can also get training directly through the AAPC. So if you're looking for that CPC certification, which is kind of the gold standard, they can train you right for that. And the CPB is the billing, and they do a combination as well. So if you want to learn billing and coding, there's a CPB, CPC package. Now, what I personally recommend, especially if you're looking for something that's on demand, online, flexible, you can do it at your own pace, you should look into Preppy. You can find out more about them by signing up for my free career masterclass at medicalcodingmasterclass.com. But Preppy is the program that I partner with, and they are so amazing at taking care of my viewers and getting them job ready in as little as 6 months. The program is 100% online, it's at your own pace, and they include a lot of features that most organizations don't, like an externship. So if you want to find out more, you can head over to medicalcodingmasterclass.com and you can get started today. Another consideration as far as is medical coding worth it in 2025 is there's a lot of maintenance costs associated with being a medical coder. So you have to pay for your training, you have to pay for your books to start everything up. And then there's also your association. So if you are, for example, a member of the AAPC and you have to be a member to take the CPC exam and you have to continue paying for membership every year to maintain your credentials, that is $222 a year at the time of this recording. It tends to go up a couple of dollars every year. There's also CEUs, so continuing education units, and your software that you might have to get, or your code books. Now, as an AAPC member, there's tons of ways that are included in your membership to earn those continuing education units. As a CPC, you have to get 36 continuing education credits every other year and submit them. Usually one CEU is equivalent to an hour of training, so you'll have to do essentially 36 hours of training every 2 years to keep your credential. Oftentimes, employers provide you with code books, or they might even cover your membership as part of their corporate membership program. So that is something to consider when you're weighing getting into medical coding, that you might have some costs, especially to start up. But eventually your employer might take over or reimburse for some of those costs. But there's still that upkeep. You still have to do those continuing education credits. You still have to maintain your membership, do your CEU. So it's not like I just learned this and now I can coast on it for the rest of my life. There's a good amount of maintenance involved, at least in the continuing education credits portion. Now, there's also a considerable amount of growth in medical coding. And some employers will assist with things like if you want to get a specialty certification and you're working in that specialty, sometimes they will reimburse for that. I find personally it's best to take your own initiative if you think that they are not going to agree to that. You might be in the field and you find that there's a certain type of coding that you prefer over others, or you want to specialize in a certain area. And the AAPC, and this is one of the big reasons too why I highly, highly recommend AAPC over HEMA, is they have so many different specialty certifications, all the different medical specialties. So cardiology, OBGYN, dermatology, family practice, and then other avenues, compliance, practice management, documentation improvement, auditing, lots more. If you're really looking to expand and grow, the AAPC is great. You can be a member of the AAPC and a HEMA, but then you have to pay 2 membership dues. You have to submit 2 different CEU requirements. And a HEMA tends to be a little bit harder as far as earning their CEUs. They've not been the best with their membership lately. They've had some financial issues that have people a little bit concerned. So really do your research if you're thinking about getting into a HEMA. There's certain areas where you kind of have to get into a HEMA, like if you want to get your RHIT or your RHIA, which requires, in those cases, those are health information certifications, not coding certifications, broader health information certifications, and you have to get certain associates and bachelor's degrees and stuff for them. We're not talking about that. We're talking about coding. So the AAPC, I think, just opens up a lot more opportunities, and they have a much better community. And I've known a lot of people that have gotten into medical coding, And they decided that, while they loved it, they maybe didn't want to do day by day, case by case coding. So they instead are like, oh my gosh, I really like working in the EMR. So they got trained in Epic and they are doing all kinds of different Epic positions, and a lot of more amazing things can open up in programming like the EMRs. Now let's talk about flexibility in medical coding. A lot of people that look into medical coding are doing so because they know that it's a position where they can very likely work from home. Medical coding has historically been a prominent remote position, even before the pandemic. And now there's a lot more flexibility in working from home. It used to be that you would kind of have to earn working from home. They'd be like, hey, if you can code so many cases in an hour and be this percentage accurate, we'll let you work from home. Now it's like, oh, well, everyone's working from home, so we're just going to have to kind of start you from day one. There is a lot of flexibility in working from home, but medical coding is not a set your own schedule type of flexible position. It's flexible as much as most business or office type positions are, meaning that they want you to work around business hours. They may say you can start between 6 a.m. or 9 a.m. and then you have to finish between, 3 and 7, but they want you to work around kind of those standard business hours with some wiggle room. And most employers are fine if you need to start later or leave earlier on certain days. However, it's just not a set your own schedule job unless you're able to obtain contract work that allows you to do that. And that's not usually something that happens within your first year or two of being a coder. Again, there are certain projects that you can find out there that you might be able to, but most positions, the majority of positions, want you to work around standard business hours. Now, there's also companies like Code Health, and they have PRN or as needed medical coding positions. So you go on, you apply, and then when they have projects that match your skill set, they'll say, hey, we need some coders like you. You can take a competency test, and they may select you for that project. It's really key, though, that you have to have your information up to date and all of your skills and certifications in the system. And it's also first come, first serve. So if they only need a couple of coders, whoever is usually able to get in faster and complete those assessments faster has a better chance of getting those projects. Now, one of the big fears that people have with this career, and understandably so, is AI. And as you can imagine, this is not exclusive to medical coding. There's a lot of careers that people are stating, oh, this is going to be completely taken over by artificial intelligence. I don't think there is a single industry out there that's not going to be touched by AI. So it's kind of easy to say that basically anything where you're working with a computer, oh, that job's going to be taken over by AI. For example, graphic design is a big one that people are saying, oh, AI, the AI is just going to take that over. But honestly, it's really more that there's tools that have fast-tracked the workflow of people with very high skills in graphic design. And then there's a lot of like amateur things that people have better tools now to kind of do it on their own. However, when it comes to money and big dollars, it gets a little bit more risky. I, for one, would not want AI automation to go through and sort all of my transactions and file my taxes without having an accountant who is skilled looking at that first. And effectively, that's what we would be doing in healthcare, except on the scale of billions and billions of dollars of healthcare transactions. So we need someone who's skilled and understands the in-depth knowledge of medical coding to, at the very minimum, review everything, verify those complex cases, look at the things that are super expensive. And honestly, healthcare is the very last to adopt new technologies. I still hear to this day of companies that want medical records sent to them via a fax machine. So it's very much going to be a AI assists medical coder, not AI takes over medical coder. And to be honest, we've probably been hearing that for like 20 years, that certain technologies, oh, that's going to take over medical coding, and they have yet to do so. We've had computer-assisted coding for as long as I've been in coding, which is probably, I think, 16, 17 years now. They used to say, oh, well, the electronic medical records here now, we don't need coders. Oh, we've had computer-assisted coding, we don't need coders. So we've had these tools, and it's still dicey at best, even with the AI implications. So is medical coding worth it in 2025? 2025, I personally would run like a cost benefit analysis to determine how it applies to you. Because if you're someone who just wants to kind of have to learn something once and not do a ton of upkeep, then it might not be worth it for you. But if you're someone who's like, "Ooh, I want a nice position in healthcare where it's a little bit more secure and I can work from home and I can grow and I love piecing through medical records but not having to deal with patients," then it might be much more worth it to you. And again, I would say make sure that you're also getting the training that fits you. If you're someone who wants a very hands on, step by step, all the bells and whistles program, those do tend to come at a higher price. However, if you're looking for something where you have flexibility, learn at your own pace, and will give you the proper training at a good price, definitely check out medicalcodingmasterclass.com. That's my free career masterclass where I tell you everything you need to know in order to get started and get started on the right path in programs like Preppy. I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, just keep on coding on.